So look, today's discussion is really going to be about the industry in terms of the market, technology, and financial trends. And with that as a high level, maybe we'll just kick it off with a broad question for you. Maybe Sanjay, you can start us off. Why now more than ever is the industry really in our national consciousness?
And if you think about it, the global economy is like $100 trillion, 100 trillion US dollars. 20% or so is durable goods. And then, there are services. Durable goods, they need semiconductors in one form or another. So about 20 to 30% by some estimations of the global economy is powered by semiconductors in one shape or another, directly or indirectly. So semiconductors are critical for the growth of the future economies. Semiconductor industry is growing faster than GDP. Through the rest of this decade, semiconductor industry will outpace GDP. And within semiconductor industry, by the way, memory, which Micron makes, we are the only US manufacturer of semiconductor DRAM and flash storage. Semiconductor memory, through the end of this decade, will outpace the semiconductor industry growth as well, because everything today is about data economy. All the trends around AI, autonomous, IoT, they all need semiconductors, they all need memory, they need more data. So there's a clear recognition that semiconductors are important. They are important for economic growth. Of course, recognition as well that national security, the critical infrastructure, national defense systems are increasingly relying on semiconductors. And today, about 85% of semiconductors are manufactured, the wafers, the silicon is manufactured in Asia. If you look at memory, 98% of memory silicon is made in Asia. So the supply chain, the wafers are all being made in Asia, primarily in 4 countries for the entire semiconductor production, 85% coming from South Korea, China, Japan, and Taiwan. So obviously, it's important, and COVID taught us all that the importance of semiconductors and the importance of a diversified, balanced supply chain. I think it's pretty clear to everybody that this distribution ought to improve over the course of next 10 to 20 years, and hence so much interest by various national governments recognizing that semiconductors are important for economic growth, they're important for national security considerations, and it's important to have a balanced, resilient, diversified supply chain. And hence, Ronnie will, I'm sure, talk about it, but CHIPS Act and incentives being provided by the US government to bring now more semiconductor manufacturing, silicon manufacturing onshore as well. So these are really the main considerations that are driving.
In our industry, when you think about what it takes to build a semiconductor manufacturing facility, the capital expenditures, and Sanjay knows this much better than I do, the cycle times associated with ordering that equipment, these are big bets that one has to make relative to supply and demand. So we're in we were in a very, very supply-based crunch for a number of years, driven by the pandemic and a number of other things. But I would say that going forward, I still, my own personal opinion is that this supply-demand curve will probably constantly exist in our industry. It's just a natural, given the fact that the expenditures are so large. But more importantly, the demand, I just don't see ceasing. To Sanjay's point, the semiconductors are so ubiquitous in terms of what is in our lives. If you look in your home, your smart TV, your home security system, your car, these are computers. 25 years ago, these were not computers. These did not have any kind of content. Now they've got memory, they've got microprocessors, they've got sensors, and that's only going to continue when you think about how it's made our lives easier. So I think secular long-term demand, 100% agree with Sanjay, that is going to outpace GDP. I think we will, though, continue to see kind of supply and demand perturbations, because it's really hard to predict when these cycles start and when they stop. We're in a down cycle now. I can almost assuredly tell you that it's going to stop, and it's going to start again, and the demand's going to be really, really strong.
If you think about what we were seeing during the pandemic, I joined the Commerce Department in April of 2021. And 2021 was a year where prices were rapidly increasing. 1/3 of inflation was driven by automobile prices. And so the first thing my boss would ask me as Secretary of Commerce is, what explains automobile prices increasing? If you think about that, it's supply and demand. But why weren't there enough supply of new and used cars? A lot of it had to do with the supply of chips. And exactly what Renee is talking about. We kind of taken for granted that semiconductors, computer chips, whatever parlance you use, is a really important but overlooked component of automobiles. And it's not just the things that you might think are very fancy in the car. Of course, it's things that, chips monitor the tire pressure. They're part of the driver assist system. They're part of the airbag. All these things need to be in the automobile for you to get it sold to you. So dealers were having these cars on their lots without chips and they weren't able to sell them. Supply-demand imbalance led to prices increasing, and that had a huge impact on the macroeconomic environment, which is something I track every day. The second piece was national security, as Sanjay mentioned. We saw during the pandemic and subsequently with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, what could happen when supply is concentrated in just one part of the world and what kind of leverage that has geopolitically. And these issues that Sanjay is talking about are important for the United States of America because chips are at every single one of our defense equipment pieces as well and our national security. So in Washington, there was this recognition, one, the supply chain resilience topic wasn't just some esoteric academic discussion, it had real economic impact. Second, the national security piece was a real and present risk for the United States. And third, the kinds of fabs that Sanjay and other people are building around the United States, there's a lot of jobs. And you think about manufacturing in this country and how much we had offshored and outsourced to other countries, we'd hollowed out a lot of those jobs, particularly for people without a college degree. And the ability to bring these fabs to the United States and create those opportunities for folks was also incredibly important. So for those three reasons, we thought, look, this is a great time to make sure that we actually make strategic public investments in a key industry, and that's what the CHIPS and Science Act is all about. I can double click on that later on, but I'll just say, we're in Silicon Valley, where when I came off the plane, someone said, well, that's a hard sell, talking about strategic public investments in the heart of capitalism. But y'all know that history of Silicon Valley comes from the same exact place, right? I mean, if you think about the post-World War II era, the defense contracts that underpin the creation of all the research at Stanford, I mean, the existence of the semiconductor and the integrated circuit that came from TI and NASA, that was a classic example of demand pull from the government creating a commercial market. And we're going to do something like that again if we're successful with the CHIPS and Science Act.